Your boy needs a haircut. I don't know if you can tell how it looks on screen. Oh, but it's annoying to me. Outside the Wire is the newest original movie from Netflix. This movie follows a drone pilot for the US in the year 2036, I think, who's helping the US fight in a war in Europe. And at the beginning of the movie, he's faced with a dilemma. He can either make a decision that will save a bunch of lives but goes against what his commanding officers want, or he could do what his officers want but what he thinks is going to cost a bunch of lives. At the end, he ends up going against his officers, and as a result, as kind of like a punishment, he's sent to the front lines basically to gain some perspective. I think the rationale is drone pilots maybe become a little bit desensitized and distant from what they actually do, and when they're placed on the ground and they can see like their work and the direct impact, it will help them kind of learn, I don't know, to follow rules or something like that. I want to talk about the positives first in this movie. I really love the CGI. There are these drones, not drones, like AI robots that the US are working with. I think they're called Gumps, if I remember correctly. And they look fantastic. Like they look real almost. The CGI in them is perfect. The action sequences are well done. The explosions look good. It's a very well computer enhanced movie. I don't know if I said that right, but it looks good. It's a good looking movie. There's also an interesting moral dilemma in this movie. So again, you have this young guy, this drone pilot, who's forced to like reckon with a decision he made that he thinks is valid, but no one else does. And I guess I should backtrack on the plot of this movie a little bit. So there's these AI robot soldiers that the U.S. has been using, and they're kind of like hated, I guess, by other soldiers. Like there's one scene where you see some soldiers like just jabbing the butt of their gun into one of the robot's heads. And they try to explore the theme of like, you know, artificial intelligence. Is it sentient? Is it, you know, superior to humanity? Is it not? And the way they do that is with Anthony Mackie's character, who I'll talk about in a second. But he ends up being a robot, and that's not a secret. They use that in the promotion for this movie. It's when you click on it on Netflix, you see that he's a robot. And so they use the relationship between Anthony Mackie's character and this young character to sort of show like the relationship between like, oh, he's a robot, so we might think he's naturally inferior, but he's a general. I can't remember his official title, but he's like high up on the totem pole, and so this young kid has to struggle with like taking orders from him, and does that, you know, will he be willing to do that? So I thought the moral dilemma, like that was an interesting concept to work with. Anthony Mackie, I've never been disappointed by him in a role. He's fine in this movie. He's as good as the movie could have been. You know, he's not great, but he's solid. Like it's a solid Anthony Mackie performance. Let's talk about the flip side, though, the negatives of this movie. There's way too much exposition. There will be a scene where our two main characters are walking towards like a village, and Anthony Mackie will be like, this is the whatever village, and then the other guy will be like, you mean where this and this and this happened? And then he'll be like, yeah. So, you know, too much telling, not enough showing at the beginning of the movie. We learn what's happening through like little paragraphs on screen, which I've never been a fan of. I mean, it gets the job done, but there's more creative ways to do that, I think. As I was mentioning earlier, I think the artificial intelligence sort of theme is a good one to try, but it's done so shallowly in this movie. Like, I think a movie where you don't know that Anthony Mackie is a robot until like the end would have been so much cooler. Like if we had seen that this kid had like a disdain for robots, and then he's forced to, you know, work under Anthony Mackie for the whole movie, and Anthony Mackie becomes like a badass and is doing all this cool stuff, and the kid like starts to look up to him, and then at the end he realizes he's been following the orders of a robot the whole time. Like I think that would have been a very interesting movie. I just don't think they explored that that concept very, very deeply or very well. The villain in this movie is also very absent. He's like your general stereotypical Russian villain. He wants to like get access to nukes and blow up the world. And we hear so much about him throughout the movie, but we don't see him. Like we only hear his name mentioned. We maybe see like pictures of him. And then when he actually shows up, he's only in the film for maybe 5 minutes. I won't say what happens to him and why he's only in the movie for a short amount of time, but I was like, you just built him up this much, and then that's what you had him do. Like I was pretty disappointed. I wanted to see more of him. So they didn't do the villain justice in this movie. Near the end of this movie, I kind of struggled to keep up with what was going on, and maybe that's just me. Like there's kind of a plot twist that happens that sort of convoluted the whole thing, and again, I just struggled to keep up with what was happening with character motivations. I just didn't really understand. Like they wanted it seemed like the filmmakers wanted it to be like, oh my gosh, like how could this happen? How could this character do this thing? And I was like, yeah, I don't, because it's very confusing. I don't follow. So there was that convoluted plot twist at the end I just wasn't a fan of. I also felt that the movie ended pretty abruptly. Like we reached the climax, and then that's pretty much the end. Like there's a closing shot of our main character like walking off, and that's it. Like there were a couple of things that I wanted to see closure on, so I wasn't a fan of the ending of the movie. Netflix for me doesn't have a very good track record when it comes to producing original movies. I know from experience from last year watching a lot of Netflix movies, they're mostly forgettable. There's maybe 1 or 2 per year that stand out as being good, and for me, I hope this isn't one of them. This movie is very forgettable. It's, derivative, like I said. I'm betting that when I go to do my end of the year movie ranking list, I'm going to have to go on IMDb and look this one up, because I'm not going to remember what it is just by looking at the name. With that being said, I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. Outside the Wire, have you watched it? Do you like it? Do you agree with my opinions? If not, or if so, let me know in the comments down below. Please be sure to stay tuned to the channel for more videos.